Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Ben Olson. That's Nathan Fox. We're the founders of LSATdemon.com and our weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. We have an email here from Caleb. The subject is, when do I move on? Logical reasoning.
Hey, y'all. I'm a demon user and love the demon's philosophy of understanding the passage.
Okay.
That it just kind of makes me smile. It kind of makes me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, so that's our philosophy.
Like our philosophy is, and this is different from other philosophies about the LSAT.
Yeah.
Our philosophy is understand what you're reading.
What are the other
And people are like,
philosophies?
wow, I never thought of that. They
Yeah.
never told me that.
Yeah.
I thought that the LSAT was all about diagramming. I thought that we had to talk about the contrapositive and sufficient and necessary all the time. And I thought that we had to do all this formal. No, not at the demon. At the demon, you could just like read carefully and understand what you're reading.
Mm-hmm.
That's the demon philosophy, apparently. Caleb continues, I try my best to truly understand what I am reading so I can get paid for my work. But I find myself going too hard on easy questions to the point where I am just wasting time and not giving enough time / understanding to harder questions. Excuse me. It's not until I make a prediction and reach the answers that I realize I did not understand the passage well enough. Wait, what?
Oh, I'm confused. I thought you were giving
That's not
too
what I
much
was
time.
expecting. Yeah. that's
Too much
Oh, well,
time?
I guess. So
Okay.
Caleb is now talking about the questions that are harder that he didn't give enough time / understanding on those questions.
Okay, so we know Caleb's problem. Caleb's trying to finish the section.
Sounds like it. Yeah. I mean, you know, Caleb, you haven't given any actual evidence that you went too hard on those easy questions and wasted your time. What do you mean you went too hard on them and wasted your time? Like it was you arrived at the correct answer, didn't you? You got paid for that work, right? That's what legal work looks like. So you're doing legal work and you're getting paid for that work.
You don't know what it would look like if you didn't work that hard. You'd probably get questions wrong.
Right. So now Caleb moves on though, like without actually supporting that point of I just wasted time on the easy ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you did. If you got them right, I doubt you wasted time. And then Caleb starts talking about, well, but on the harder ones, I make a prediction and I reach the answers, and then I realize that I did not understand the passage well enough. I start freaking out a little bit and I get frustrated because I feel like I have tainted my understanding by looking at the answer choices. That happens a lot. I get more flustered when I go back to reread parts of the passage. I know that I should not mind the time, but this problem feels less about time and more about frustration with myself for not getting it the first time around when I should have.
Well, I think there's some truth to this. You got to give yourself you got to forgive yourself here a little bit. It's like sometimes we just didn't get it as well as we should have when we first read it. But if this is happening a lot, then it's probably the case that you just need to slow down more in the passage. Don't need to beat yourself up about it. Just say, okay, I should have taken more time to understand each sentence, and I'll try to do that more on the next one.
Caleb says, after I name the premises and conclusions, identify who is saying what, and find gaps in arguments, what do you recommend for knowing whether or not I should move on and how to avoid the feelings I mentioned above?
What? Okay, I'm a little confused because, Caleb, you're saying after I name the premises and the conclusions, you rarely have to do that. You do need to know what the author is trying to conclude, and then it should be fairly clear what evidence or premises the author is trying to use to support that conclusion. But the focus is on, do those premises prove that conclusion, not have I named them precisely. That's just a natural outgrowth of evaluating the argument. But
I am weirded out a little bit by Caleb saying, after I name the premises and the conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Caleb seems to be doing a very formal process here.
Yeah. Like
And to me, it's like
literary analysis, right? Read the poem. Is it a good poem? Does it touch you? Does it make you feel something? Not, well, there are 3 syllables before the first indent.
right. I see. Yeah. So you prefer the former approach.
Yeah.
Which is like vibe check.
Enjoy the poem.
What's the point here?
Yeah.
Well, right. Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, why do you feel that way? And when I ask you why you feel that way, your explanation should probably be something like, well, they're concluding this, but their evidence is just this.
Mm-hmm.
And on that evidence, it's totally possible that this conclusion can still be false. Like, what about this? What about this other thing? Or maybe it's, well, they're clearly confusing sufficient for necessary here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a flaw in logic. They've already, like, they look how stupid this is on its face. That's one kind of an objection. Another kind of objection is, well, I see what they're trying to say, but that evidence doesn't really prove this conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the conclusion could be true on these facts, but the conclusion doesn't have to be true on these facts. That's what I'm doing, Caleb.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, is that naming the premises and conclusions?
No,
Or
I don't think it
who
is.
is saying what, or finding gaps in arguments?
No, it's not, because that's focusing on the structure. It's not that we're unaware of the structure or can't figure it out when asked about it, but it's secondary to the underlying ideas. Okay, what's your evidence and what are you trying to prove on the basis of that evidence? When Caleb hears us say that, Caleb thinks the goal is to name premises and to
parts.
identify them as, hey, look, that right there is a premise. No, yeah, sure, it is. But more important, what is that premise saying?
Yeah.
And do you think that proves the conclusion?
Yeah. What do they want? What's their conclusion? And did they get there or not? I would encourage Caleb, like, how often, Caleb, do you read an argument and go, oh, that's a valid argument?
Mm-hmm.
Because when there are arguments, which is like what, 60%, 70% of the 70% of logical reasoning questions, let's say, have an argument. So there's 30%, Caleb, that don't even have premises and conclusions.
Yep.
And that's a whole different analysis. That's like, well, there was no conclusion there. There was just a bunch of facts. From those facts, you might be able to make one connection. It's this right here. And then that's like the answer to the question very frequently.
Yeah.
When there is an argument, about 10% of the time, it's actually valid, where the premises do prove the conclusion. I have a feeling that Caleb is like robotically going, well, there's the conclusion. That's a premise, and that's a premise, and that's a conclusion. And let's see, the gap is, and like he's saying there's a gap when there's not even a gap.
Yeah, the gap makes it abstract. So Caleb, what you're doing is you're abstracting this process rather than diving into the content itself.
Try to have my voice, Caleb, or Ben's voice. My voice is a bit more strident, and it can be, I think, a useful companion to you as you're doing LSAT logical reasoning. It's like, well, what would Nathan think about this?
Mm-hmm.
What can I hear him reacting to this argument? Now, remember, I am gonna sometimes go, oh, well done, well played. If I accept your evidence, I have to accept your conclusion. That's a valid argument.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that's going to be my reaction, but other times I'm going to be saying that argument is outright flawed, and let me tell you why. Or other times I'm going to be saying, well, I get it. I mean, I see what you're trying to conclude, but your evidence, even if it's true, just doesn't really prove this conclusion, because let me tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
What about this? What about this other thing? But there's different reactions, right? I think I just went through 4 different possible reactions. 1, there's no argument at all. 2, there's a valid argument. 3, there's a flawed argument. 4, there's an argument that's okay, but not proven.
Yeah.
So yeah, Caleb has a one size fits all. Oh, I just name the premises and the conclusions, figure out who said what, and find the gaps.
Caleb continues, what do you recommend for knowing whether or not I should move on and how to avoid these feelings I mentioned above? I just want Caleb to let go of actually. So the irony is that you need to know what the conclusion is. You need to know what the evidence is to decide whether the evidence proves the conclusion. But I want Caleb to let go of those things. I want Caleb to just understand what the person is saying and let the conclusion become obvious from the context or the meaning rather than from the structure.
I think you could get at the same thing in a slightly different way, though, by like the first question, Caleb could be, I mean, I want to know what Ben thinks of this, but what if the first question is just, is there a conclusion? And if so, what is it? So in other words, are they doing logic or not?
Mm-hmm.
Did they just present me with a bunch of fun facts, or did they give me an argument?
Yeah.
And well, that is a little bit formal. It's a little bit abstract, but it's if Caleb needs like a rubric.
Yeah, my fear with that though, and this is my, so and this is again, I guess I'm struggling a little bit here because it is ironic. I do that, but I do that every time at the end of a passage. I'm like, okay, wait a sec, that felt like a set of facts. I don't see any grand conclusion coming here. So I am doing that, but it's coming from or after fully understanding what each sentence is saying. Like I'm visual. Oh, okay. You're saying global warming is happening. Got it. Okay. Now you're saying that rainfall is increasing over India. Okay. Got it. Now you're saying there's less rainfall over Europe. Okay. Got it. Wait, are you, doesn't seem like any of these claims are supporting each other. So you must just be giving me a set of facts. Or if something sticks out as a conclusion, then I say, oh, that's a conclusion. So, but it comes always after. It's almost like serving the accuracy master before the speed master, right? You have to do that. You can never really serve the speed master. You have to serve the understanding master before structure or anything else.
Yeah, you do have to understand each element first, because you can't answer the question, was there an argument, if you didn't understand the individual elements. So that's possible that Caleb is losing the fight right there. You know, I mean, Caleb admits there are some questions where I'm just not spending enough time. Well, I think you're probably just not spending enough time actually understanding the individual elements that were presented.
The underlying
Then you're
meaning.
trying to put together a puzzle where you don't even know what like you haven't turned all the pieces over yet.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Like you start with the pieces face down. Reading the argument, like reading each sentence in the argument is turning over the puzzle pieces and seeing what they look like. Right? Then you can start sorting them into corners and edges and middle pieces. Then you can start putting together, but you do have to flip them over first. And I think that maybe that's what's going on with Caleb, is that he's just not even flipping over some of the puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
He flips over 3 out of 5 puzzle pieces and then starts trying to separate them.
He's like, oh, this looks like a border piece. Yeah, I said therefore. So yeah.
It's not a good example because you actually could do that with the pieces face down. Let's say we were sorting by color instead. You know, he's like sorting by color without turning over some of the pieces. Yeah. Well, then, by the time you get down into the answer choices, which remember, the answer choices are like 4 pieces that are not even to this puzzle. And 1 piece that is. And so you're going there, you're like sorting through more puzzle pieces when you still haven't even turned over a couple of the puzzle pieces that you know are in the puzzle. Yeah. Now you're looking at other puzzle pieces, looking for one candidate puzzle piece that fits with puzzle pieces that you haven't actually looked at.
Yeah. It's not going to work.
That's a good analogy, by the way. I like that analogy a lot. Thank you, Caleb. Anything more for Caleb?
No. Email daily at lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.